Thought of that this morning, wasn't it funny? And I'll be your celebrant this morning. If you are a visitor here this morning, we're so glad to welcome you. We welcome every person of goodwill, just as you are, whatever body you inhabit, whomever you love, whatever your age, you are welcome here. If you would like to receive our newsletter and other announcements, please fill out the connection cards found in the pockets of the chairs with the hymnals. You can drop those in the collection plate or the basket in the entryway after service. We invite everyone to join us for coffee, treats, and conversation after the service, both in person and on Zoom. For the folks on Zoom, you'll find the order of service in the chat. Now, will you please take a moment to turn around and greet your friends on Zoom? Hello. And then welcome all your neighbors. Say hello to everybody that you haven't met before or good friends. It is so good to be together in all the ways that we gather. And I'd like to also welcome you with this reading that I found, Peace in the Heart. If there is to be peace in the world, there must be peace in the nations. If there is to be peace in the nations, there must be peace in the cities. If there is to be peace in the cities, there must be peace between neighbors. If there is to be peace between neighbors, there must be peace in the home. If there is to be peace in the home, there must be peace in the heart. And you've all watched the announcement loop that was on the screen, but I have one more announcement, and Julie McAllister will let us know about that.
Thank you. Good morning. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Julie McAllister, and I am the board president this year. And I just wanted to let people know we are having an after service with the board today. It was in the newsletter, but so if you haven't been to one of those, the board is just here to answer questions. We do not have a formal agenda or anything else. So the plan is about 20 minutes of coffee and treats, and then we'll be up here in the front if anyone has any questions and wants to talk to us. Thanks.
Thank you, Julie. Our fellowship is located in the ancestral homeland of the Pasquosa. For thousands of years, the Pasquosa have been stewards of this land, fishing, hunting, gathering roots and berries, and practicing their cultural traditions. The Pasquosa still live here. We acknowledge that their land, like that of so many other First Nations on this land, was taken because the U.S. government broke treaty obligations and carelessly allowed uninvited white colonists to settle on their homeland. As Unitarian Universalists, we believe in the inherent worth and dignity of every person, that human relations must be governed by justice, equity, and compassion, and respect for the interdependent web of all existence. We support the inherent rights of the Pasquosa as Indigenous people and acknowledgement of the treaty rights that they retained. Support includes building relationships with the Pasquosa, advocating for government recognition of Pasquosa rights, and increasing awareness of and education about Pasquosa history, culture, traditions, and language. We stand alongside our Indigenous neighbors as they continue their traditions and seek to have all of their rights recognized. We acknowledge our shared responsibility to sustain right relationships with each other and the land. For more on this subject, please visit our website, cascadeuu.org, under Welcome. And now we will stand in body and spirit to sing hymn number 240.
Words written by Unitarian long ago. Not a universalist, but a Unitarian. We come from many places. We come along different paths, bringing different truths. We come with different histories, different realities, and yet we come together as one people with faith, one faith, that we can use our differences to heal ourselves and each other and bring wholeness to a fractured world. We come seeking to find community, to find acceptance of who we are in this place. May we find others who different are much like us. And let us find those whose differences enliven and awaken us.
The chalice and flame symbolize our congregation gathered in principles and faith. If you are at home and you have your chalice with you, please join me in lighting it. Here in the sanctuary, we will speak these words in unison. They're printed in your bulletin or on the screen. Our chalice reminds us that we are a people of many different stories, with many voices, and yet always one community, working together for a world where love creates justice and where justice gives birth to peace. Are there any children with us today? We have one child. What? It's okay. It's okay. It's totally okay to be who you are, isn't it? So actually, Thomas is going to do the story today, and I'll let him introduce it.
Rhonnie and I spent a lot of time looking at stories about conflict. Finally chose this one because Longfellow, who wrote the words to that previous hymn, Unitarian, had taken words and stories from the Seneca people, various peoples. Robbie Robertson, who's a musician with the band and with Bob Dylan, but of Cayuga and Seneca background, decided to write a story that was given to him by his people about Hiawatha. So I could just end, that's kind of like a sermon right there. But instead, you can stay here or you can go off to the room and play and color if you'd like to. And if you want to go, you want to go. So go ahead and make a tunnel and we will sing Go Now Together.
Go with each other to find meaning in the spirit of love that we share. Now go with each
Other to find meaning in the spirit of love and despair.
We have two today. That's
a good deal. They appear magic. We set aside some time to create community, to share with one another, to honor and remember. I'll take the flame down here. Turn on the microphone. And then we will share. Remember, we share only what we have permission to share. I have led worship centered on peace sometime in early December for every year of this century. Practice began when I noticed that there was this increased level of stress and busyness in my congregation during December. many different demands of the holidays, changing in children's school schedules, all the other things, the darkness growing, and other troubles in the world. So always peace begins December, or it's early in December. I think of peace in a simple three-tiered way. It's very much like if there is to be peace in the world, then there has to be peace in our relationships, and if there is peace in our relationships, then there must be peace in ourselves. We are all very aware of war. We want to end war. The Russian novelist Leo Tolstoy set war and peace together in 1867 with his book, War and Peace. And the idea that rises up around this title and these words is that they are opposites that are sort of interrelated, like yin and yang. Peace is the absence of war. But people will fight wars in order to end conflicts and create peace. War is understood as militarized conflict, and something that happens between nations, between authorities, between powers. I lived in St. Louis for several years, and I saw the way in which gangs would divide up territories and arm themselves and commit violence. And I think this nation has an addiction to war and violence, does not question it fundamentally. There has not been a single decade in the history of the United States of America in which there has not been a declared war against someone. Maybe it was the Oneida, it was the Comanche, maybe it was the 12 Colville tribes. Maybe it was France, maybe it was Mexico, maybe it was England, maybe it was all of Europe, maybe it was the Japanese. Always war, always war. It is addictive. It is addictive to feel that you have the power to be at war with someone and get rid of something that is irritating you or threatening you. One of the little stories that we were looking at possibly telling before I chose the Hiawatha story was about a little girl who had decided to be loving and kind. Do unto others as you want them to do unto you. So she would go and be nice, kind, and everybody liked her, and they thought she was great, except this one girl who just would push her or take things from her or say mean things for no reason at all. And she was starting to feel really miserable and kind of angry, and what am I going to do about this? And she finally asked the teacher, who just said, you need to draw a line. And if she comes across in the sand, you're playing in the sand, and she throws sand in your face, you need to draw a line and say, I'm not going to come back across this line and be with you unless you're going to be kind to me. We need to set limits. When a nation attacks another nation, perhaps Russia attacks Ukraine, we have to set lines. But we need to do this better as a global community. We need to say that human beings can live together in peace. We need to listen to the voice of the peacemaker who said we're fighting against each other because we all feel threatened and angry. This congregation, like so many others, want to embody a different way of being in the world so that when there is conflict, we have mediation. So when there is conflict, there is ways of talking through the differences and understanding. We practice this, we have taught this. This is the way we are in the world, and we wish we could give this to the world. I mentioned before that the little performance of All Is Calm that's going on at the Riverside Theater, where older men are playing young men. And embodying this moment where human beings who are in the middle of a violent war just get sick of it and want to be friends. And it's music that brings them together. It's that singing together. To listen to each other's songs, to listen to the songs of love and peace. If we can do this across the world, maybe we'll start moving away from a world that is addicted to violent war. We know, I love that image of, as far away as Canada, living in Israel and knowing that Syria, 50 years of father and son rule finally just unraveling because they tried to shut people down with violence. And now there's actually talk about negotiation. There's actually talk about ambassadors forming peace with each other and not creating another violent war with Israel, who is continuing their violent war. Right? But I hear the voices saying, let's just stop the bombs and start talking to each other. So we hope. But it creates anxiety, and the world is stressful. At this time, when Syria started to fall apart and Assad ran out of his country, there was this anxiety that there was going to be a lot more violence. Christmas time, Christmas present, Hanukkah present. And anxiety is always there. Being human, it's hard to live without feeling a little anxious. We all know. Even a city like this is relatively peaceful, relatively few gun deaths compared to some others. We can still feel anxious. And in our lives, and illness threatening us, we worry about our finances, and we worry about our well-being, and we worry about our families. Always is a source of anxiety and not peace. To make peace, to be able to open to peace, even in the midst of anxiety and difficulty, is an essential spiritual discipline. All religions speak to the ultimate oncoming of death for all of us, and the way it makes us anxious, and the way in which we fight sometimes, fight just to get as much life as we can before the door shuts. The religions always say, fighting is not going to give you more life. It's just going to give you more fighting. It's that great classic saying, no one knows exactly who, so it's been attributed to a lot of people, but war does not prove who is right. War does not show who is right. It only shows who is left. The ending of a war does not say that the person who won the war has any moral character, any governing ability, or any qualities that make it worthy of war. We have these little stories and illusions that the person who wins a fight somehow has some greater integrity, but that's not true. We know this is not true. We've seen it over and over. These people who take power, Assad's father took power through violence, through a violent coup. Didn't make him any better, didn't make him any more loving, did not create peace. At the end of a violence, at the end of war, you need to go beyond. One of the most amazing things that happened in the 20th century was this country engaged in a global war, and we ended it by dropping one of the most terrifying weapons on 2 cities in Japan. Violent, terrible ending to that war. We were not going to just fight it slowly to the end. We were going to massively whack those people and tell them, stop. But then afterwards, we started to set in policies. It took a while. It was slow. Although there were some people who immediately started thinking, how can we reach out? I know of Unitarian Universalists who, as soon as the war ended, were reaching out to Japanese people and saying, how can we feed your children? How can we help you? And over the next decades, we helped rebuild the economy of Japan. Never let them get weapons, but rebuild, become a dignified, respected member of the world of nations, the League of the United Nations. Instead of saying, we're going to crush the people that we defeated, we're going to create peace. And to move forward with the anxiety that war caused. to move forward with creating relationships is powerful. And each of us in our own lives deals with anxieties and irritations all the time. I remember I had a member of UU congregation. She and I had talked early on about the word God and how the word God to her did not summon up that weird character in the Bible who seems rather inconsistent. For her, the word God, though, still was a living word that meant the source of peace and well-being in the world. And then one day, she was having a conversation with some people during coffee hour. Do not follow this example. And she got angry and yelled at a woman in her face loudly and shut down. Everyone just went silent. As she yelled, she was angry. She was very angry, upset. And afterwards, she came and apologized to me. And she said, I've just been feeling more and more angry lately. And the anger comes up stronger and stronger. And I'm feeling more and more frustrated with it. And because we'd had this earlier conversation about spirituality and peace, I said, so when you start to get angry, where is God for you? And her eyes went big. Where? It just goes away. And so we started talking about practices so that it would help her bring peace, goodness back into every day, into every moment, even when she's irritated, to remember, to make it also present, not just the anger, not just the irritation, but to remember her love and her kindness and her hope and her wonder. Title of the sermon, I'm going to go ahead and close quickly. The title of the sermon came from Thich Nhat Hanh, Being Peace. Wrote a beautiful book called Being Peace, and at the beginning of it he says, suffering is not enough. Existence is full of suffering, but that's not enough. There is also wonder, the blue skies, smell of clear air, growing things, the smile of a little baby. To find in your own heart how to make peace always present, become aware of it, find in your relationships how to bring peace in, and then keep reminding all the rest of the world that if they're not doing that, they need to, so that we can all create peace on earth, goodwill to all. To remind us one of the ways in which we support this congregation in strengthening through covenant groups, what? With hope and light and truth and love, we create peace. We work to be diverse, multicultural, beloved communities where all thrive. We covenant to dismantle racism and all forms of systemic oppression. We support inclusive, democratic processes to make decisions within our congregations, our associations, and society at large. By this, we create justice, and justice creates peace.
Now, as we extinguish our chalice, please join us in the words that are printed in the bulletin or on your screen. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and embody in our lives until we are together again. And now let's form our circle and sing our closing song.